Chris. Humble and proud of it. This morning's text has been embraced and cherished by Christ's church for centuries. It calls us to the core of Christianity. The short story of the conceited Pharisee, contrasted with the humble tax collector, beckons us back to the basics of our faith. There is something automatically attractive about a truly humble person, and there is something really off-putting about having to deal with someone seriously arrogant, or at least one who doesn't hide it well. Humility's attractiveness is found in Matthew's Gospel, a portion just read for us by Chris. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. We are promised rest of soul, peace of mind, and a comforted heart. Who among us does not need that? Arrogance and conceit are competitive by nature. They're about making sure that we're ahead of, better than others. And that effort, that exertion is taxing, stressful on our hearts. As someone once said, even if you win the rat race, you're still the rat. And the Pharisee is a rat. We feel offended when he tells God, I thank you that I am not like this tax collector over there. However, we must give the devil his due. The Pharisee was honest. He was expressing what he truly believed. And he was right. Don't dismiss him too easily. He was morally superior to the other guy. He exceeded all of us in piety and sacrifice. He went without food twice a week, even though the religious law didn't require him to. He gave 10% of his entire income to the temple, even though the religious law only called for 10% of farming products. In both cases, he went well above and beyond the call of duty. He truly was very religious. And we would have some problems with the tax collector ourselves. As we have mentioned before, in Jesus' time, tax collectors were Jews who turned against their own people and collaborated with the enemy. They agreed to collect taxes for the Romans, an occupying power. And we're told that anything they collected over what Rome demanded, they could keep for themselves. That led to some serious financial gouging on their part. They were selfish traders in general, who were physically safe only as long as Rome ruled. The day the Roman army pulled out, the tax collectors would go with them if they knew what was good for them. We need to pick our way carefully here. The Pharisee should have been grateful that he was not like the tax man. We should be grateful we are better than that revenue raider. So what's wrong with this picture? Why is the Pharisee so awfully accused in Christian history? What is so wrong with a little gloating that your life is more moral than most? What's so wrong with keeping score and finishing first once in a while? What the Pharisee fails to grasp, what has cut him off from God and everyone else, is truth we are already acquainted with, which serves the spirit of Scripture, even if it lacks specific chapter and verse. And I refer to the well-known axiom and saying, there, but for the grace of God, go I. I will now offer the case of Richard Kuklinski. He recently died while serving a life sentence at a New Jersey state prison. He was about as evil a man as I've ever heard about. He had spent his adult life as a hitman, an executioner for a New York City mafia family. During a prison interview that I once showed my law class when I was teaching high school, he said that he had murdered around 200 people. He thought it might be more, but he had long ago lost count. He had killed all sorts of people in all sorts of ways and disposed of their remains in any number of ways. He felt no remorse. He said it was never personal. It was just business. For the right price, he would kill anyone. Every person sitting in this sanctuary this morning is a better person than Richard Kuklinski was. And we should thank God that we are. But let me tell you a little more about him. He was raised during the 1930s in a very difficult New York City housing project, of course, during the Depression. As a youth, he was physically small. His father was an angry, brutal man who would beat Richard severely upon arriving home from work if he had had a bad day, which more often than not he had had. Richard's nickname for his mother was Cancer. She was also violent and punitive. She once broke a broomstick on him during a beating. He had no siblings and was preyed upon by the other older youths in his tough neighborhood. Until one day, he saw several of his tormentors waiting outside on the sidewalk for him. He'd had enough. He removed a large steel rod used for hanging clothes in a closet. He said, "I went out and we went to war. I learned that day that it felt good to hurt people instead of letting them hurt you." His wife would later say that when dating and at her home during Christmas, he was amazed at the decorated tree, the lights, the music, the gifts, the special meals. He had never seen any of these things in his own home or anywhere else before. She testified that there was no love in his home, none whatsoever. So Richard Kuklinski died in prison. Good. He should have. If he had gotten the death penalty, he would have deserved that. We can be very grateful that our paths never crossed with his. But if we had to switch parents, exchange backgrounds with him, where we would have ended up if we were raised and preyed upon by two brutal parents in a violent neighborhood outside of the home. How different would his life have turned out if he had been brought up by our parents? We can be glad we didn't do the awful things that he did, but we cannot gloat, and the Pharisee was gloating. I don't know why the tax collector chose the life he did, but I guess if he and the Pharisee had switched backgrounds and early life experiences, shoes would have switched feet in crucial ways. There, but for the grace of God, go I. We are each dealt a hand in life we have no say in, to use the analogy of a card game. I've met any number of people who were given terrible cards. They have to try and play them as best they can. Some of them lose the game. They end up being removed from society so that they cannot prey upon the rest of us. That removal is necessary. The state of Vermont currently operates 7 prisons, one just for women. Almost without exception, that is where the inmates belong. We don't want them moving in next door to us. But something else we don't want is to switch backgrounds with them. Then we might be sitting this morning in Newport or St. Johnsbury or Rutland. They might be sitting here. God is able to be so merciful because he does know what we've all been through at one time or another. He doesn't deal the cards, but he knows the hands we've all been dealt. It is very, very important for each of us to have an adequate understanding of the cards, the hands that each of us have been dealt. They wouldn't be as bad as those given to Richard Kuklinski, but I guess few, if any of us, grew up with Ozzie and Harriet either, or the Brady Bunch, if you're too young to remember Ozzie Nelson. God does know the hands that we each have been dealt, and so he can be merciful and gracious with us. If more of us had a better sense of the hands we've had to play, that we had no choice in, we could join God in being more merciful to ourselves. We owe that to ourselves. And it may be the most important thing we do owe ourselves. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul.